The city of Houston wants to get more control over how the Houston firefighters' pension plan operates. A lawsuit has now been filed against the firefighters' pension fund in an effort to gain greater control and limit rising contribution costs. Last week, Mayor Anise Parker once again reaffirmed her belief that the pensions paid to retired firefighters are not only too generous, but they're unsustainable for taxpayers. But so far, retirement fund managers have ignored summons to come to the bargaining table, so she's taken them to court. Firefighters call this an attack on them and a political vendetta because they have not supported her campaigns. So who's right and who's wrong in this debate? We are talking about it this morning, and joining us live in our newsroom, we have our legal analyst, Chris Tritico, our news analyst, Mustafa Tamiz, and public policy analyst, Jackie Bally. Good morning, guys. Should the city have control over how the fund operates, do you think?
Well, I don't know that they're necessarily asking for control as they are asking for input. This is a special law passed 50, 60 years ago, I can't remember the date, that only applies to the city of Houston. That says the city, basically shuts the city out of the process of determining how much the city of Houston pays as its contribution to the firefighters' pension fund. And I think what the mayor is saying here is, let's not slip into a Detroit situation where we can't ever fund these pensions. And quite frankly, Jackie Bally, one of the benefits of working for government is that you get to retire early and you get a good pension for the rest of your life. That's a great benefit for working for government for less money than we could make in the private sector. But at some point, don't the cities have to look up and say, we can't continue this?
One of the things that I think the mayor's trying to do, and I agree with her, and I think this is what you're saying as well, is that she's trying to say, look, we need to have policy that at least gives us local control as far as implementation and design as far as these pension plans. But the problem she's running into is it's not only just the firefighters, you're also having municipal workers, you're also having police department. And when you implement this plan, when does it start and when does it end? So I think that's the fine line that she's running into. And of course, legislators, who she has to take this law to, or at least she tried to take it to them twice, Republicans and Democrats don't want to vote in favor of something like this because you're taking money, or at least it gives the impression that you're taking money away from people who've been working for these pensions.
Is it over the top for the mayor to say the city should have some input in how much money the city is putting into the pension fund?
Not at all. And the mayor's worked a lot with the municipal pension union that has made a number of compromises to make their plan more solvent. She's also worked with the police and made their plan more solvent. But when it comes to the firefighters, she has no ability to do so because
the city's shut out of the board.
The city's shut out of the board, and we're the only city in the entire state that's shut out of the board in terms of being able to negotiate. And what this lawsuit requires is she's not looking to change their benefits. She's just looking to understand what is actually happening.
And where do they go? I mean, she hasn't said it yet, but clearly she's talking about a situation like Detroit got into, where they can't. They had to file bankruptcy because their pensions were so overbloated they couldn't pay for it.
Right. I mean, in the last decade or so, the pensions from that one area alone has more than tripled. And so it's an increasingly higher number, and she's looking at the dollars, and it's not really helping in the future for the city.
Let me go to Sally. She's monitoring our social media accounts.
Well, this lawsuit is really not popular among our viewers at all. We are not seeing any support for Mayor Parker this morning on our Facebook page. Kevin says these firefighters are already not paid what they're worth. The pension gives them something to look forward to. And then Christopher says, I think pensions should be left untouched and that should remain, but people misusing pensions should risk penalties, you know, things like early withdrawal and so forth.
You know, I agree with Kevin that firefighters aren't paid enough for the job that they do. They're the biggest unsung heroes that we have.
Absolutely.
But the mayor's point, I think, is a valid point, that we can't continue funding pensions at a greater rate than the city can afford to pay. I'm a big believer that anybody who works for government ought to be able to leave with a great pension because we pay them so much less than they could get in the private market. But that, at the same time, you can't force the city into bankruptcy while doing that.
And what the mayor said, that any money that would be saved from it, she would put it back to the firefighters, meaning she would give it to them in a pay increase or some kind of a benefit increase. So she's not looking to take money away from the firefighters. She's trying to make the plan more solvent because according to her numbers, you know, after 30 years of service, when a firefighter leaves, they get an $850,000 cash annuity, and then they also get 97% of their pay. Now those are the numbers she's saying, so if you calculate it, it's 197% of your pay you know, every year after you've retired. Now, those are pretty significant numbers, and those are the mayor's numbers. The firefighters union says that they're not true, but they're not able to come up with factual data. Nobody really knows what's happening.
We're almost out of time.
She's also saying that for new hires, there'll be a lesser or a fewer percentage.
A sliding scale downward to save the city money. Is this an attack on the firefighters because they didn't support the mayor?
It's seen that way. It's seen as a political vendetta because the mayor and the firefighters have always gone back and forth. But the numbers are not adding up. And what she's saying is true. The viewers, though, however, I think that's the problem the mayor's going to continue to run into. Because the firefighters are our unsung heroes, and trying to take money away from them is just not going to look good.
And the teachers, I mean, Governor Abbott just came out and said, you know, we're paying our teachers plenty of money, which we're not.
We're last in the nation. We got to go. We don't have time for that topic today. Mustafa, once again, trying to shift the topic to another area, Sally.
You know,
I'm stopping
we are going to talk
you.
about your child's education, though, coming up in our next hour here. We're going to talk about school choice. So
that's right.
Thank you,
stay
Sally.
tuned for that,
No, thank
okay?
you,
We'll get those comments in, Mustafa. Let's go to Caitlin with a check your forecast.